Mike Adams here with OblivionAgenda.com. That's the new website where I'm posting analysis videos about what I call the Oblivion Agenda, which is the agenda to annihilate humankind. You could call it depopulation, genocide, eugenics, galactic genocide if you wish, whatever you want to call it, but it's the same thing. And, I recently gave a talk in Branson, Missouri, and thank you for all of you who attended. And that talk was entitled Oblivion Agenda, and I promised to post a lot more discussion and analysis of the important points of that talk on OblivionAgenda.com. And so that's what this is. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the takeaway analysis of what I learned at the event from the incredible contacts there that is, not just speakers, and I spoke with most of the speakers, but there were a lot of behind the scenes, very powerful or influential individuals, people who work inside the government, even in DHS, for example, people who work in security, people who are former special forces, people who are CEOs of very big corporations that are involved in things like preparedness. I'm not going to mention any names because that's not important, but what I've done is I have aggregated what I think are the big takeaway points from all of this from some very intelligent, very successful people about what they think is about to happen in America. And so that's the analysis of this, and it starts with bad news. The bad news is that there is consensus across most well-informed, powerful people that it's over for America, that it's going to get much worse before it gets better. In fact, there's even, of course, a spiritual component to all of this that becomes very quickly Book of Revelation, 7 years of tribulation, all these things. By the way, which most people believe has not begun yet. So there will be 7 years of incredible difficulty and famine and, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and all that. That's coming. We haven't even begun that, and things are already falling apart. But I want to give you the highlights of sort of the takeaways from this. So again, it's over for America. It's now just a matter of time before America falls apart. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you know that I anticipated America as we know it would be over by 2025. And in fact, I've said with some degree of certainty that Trump would be the last president of the United States of America as we know it today. And by that, what I mean is, 50 states. I think we're going to experience, almost regardless of who wins or loses in 2020, or especially 2024, we're going to experience probably secession and breakaway, maybe regional nation states. America as we know it, I believe, is over. And this was really reflected back to me in many of the private conversations that I had with well-informed and well-positioned individuals. So America is known by many people to be well over, we'll say. And what we mean by that is a collapse of the centralization of power. That there's a very strong realization that the political left and the political right cannot coexist, but more importantly, that the political left has abandoned the very pillars of a constitutional republic, that the radical left is completely lawless, and that even those people inside government, in high levels of government, realize that the lawlessness of the left cannot be kept under control. And so it is widely expected that there will be mass chaos and social unrest and lawlessness in left-wing cities, and that this is coming in the next, let's say, 5 to 6 years, one way or another, kind of depending on what happens with elections and the economy and perhaps the stock market and so on. I don't know where this fits in, but there are also a lot of people who believe that there is a land invasion of the United States from military forces that's being staged. So that Russian tanks, for example, are being staged in Central and South American countries, or perhaps even Mexico. Now, you've heard that from Dave Hodges before, and I did interview Dave Hodges from the Common Sense Show, and I'll be posting that interview soon. But I heard this from other people as well. that there are Russian troops that are being trained and being staged, and some of them trained in the United States, that there are sleeper cells of United Nations operatives who have already blended into the population all across the country, and that those sleeper cells are just waiting to be activated to carry out acts of terrorism, to attack the institutions of the United States, such as state capitals and governments, and perhaps Trump or Washington, D.C., and so on, that there is a big agenda to take America down, and that Communist China is very much part of this agenda. And Communist China, as you know, has infiltrated universities, they've stolen technology, they've infiltrated, even our defense industry, right? And Communist China did deals with Obama and Bill Clinton, by the way. So they've gone to the highest levels of our government, and they have infiltrated and compromised our country to every imaginable degree. And that Communist China is planning to wage a massive assault on our monetary system by potentially selling off U.S. treasuries, collapsing the debt selling capabilities of the United States, and rolling out their own gold-backed currency and pushing for the collapse of the dollar as the global reserve currency, or petrodollar. So that's coming as well. All right, in addition to that, as if that's not enough, you've got, of course, lawlessness will explode all over left-wing cities. Much of the West Coast will become almost unsurvivable except by luck. When things really get out of control, which could happen with the 2020 election, or Steve Quayle has been talking about the potential for large-scale geological events along the West Coast, specifically in the Cascadia region from Washington and Oregon. I don't know how many miles inland that is, but all those mountains there from St. Helens and Rainier and that whole mountain range, all the way down to really the San Andreas Fault of California, which has been having hundreds of thousands of small earthquakes that no one else seems to be covering, that seem to show something big is about to break along that fault line. And if it does, we're talking about a natural disaster-induced episode of severe chaos across those regions. But even if that doesn't happen, we're talking about political chaos. And one of the things I learned is that even federal law enforcement agents, whether Border Patrol or federal response teams or DHS or what have you, they have already, and by the way, this is consistent with something I mentioned over a year ago, they have already been ordered to not bother prosecuting most crimes in those left-wing cities like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And right now, they are barely able to keep up with the big serious crimes like, organized crime assassinations. Anything smaller than that is now largely being ignored. And it is understood by these departments that the lawlessness of these left-wing cities is now uncontrollable, and the expansion of the lawlessness is unstoppable. It will now become an uncontrolled collapse of law and order. And you're already seeing it in these left-wing cities in terms of the homelessness, the human feces all over the streets of San Francisco. You're seeing the collapse of public health. You're seeing the return of all these, third world diseases now in these cities. The collapse of law and order, just violence in the streets. Nancy Pelosi wants to run again because I guess she's done such a great job thrusting her people into destitution and substance abuse and homelessness and poverty. But it is understood at the federal level now that these cities are going to collapse and that the federal agents are not going to be able to stop it. Do you remember over a year ago, I warned that I had learned through some of my other contacts with military contractors, or I should say former military security contractors. That's how they operate today. That's their job. They get hired to do security gigs paid for by, defense contractor companies like Blackwater, although I don't know anybody who's, i.e. Blackwater. I don't even think that's their name anymore, but that style of thing. But they told me over a year ago that there was word going around that events were coming, many left-wing cities were going to collapse, and the order had been sent down to those who coordinate these contractors to prepare to hire masses of contractors to almost quarantine these cities, to sequester them, to block the roads going in and out of these cities, but not to go into the cities and engage what, frankly, even the federal agents call zombie mobs, or just zombies, not to engage the zombies because the federal government already knows, or at least certain people in the government, they know that these left-wing cities are a lost cause, that they're unrecoverable, they cannot be saved. And the orders are going to be to stand outside the cities, to let the cities burn, and to just block the highways so no one goes in or out without special permission. And what I have now learned since then absolutely confirms what I was told, over a year ago about that, about contractors are going to be, in fact, hired to enforce quarantines of entire cities. It's just incredible. And the other thing is that a lot of these people who work for the federal agencies right now, you wouldn't believe how many of them, even though they may work for the federal government, they might be a federal agent, they might work for the FBI, and they kind of play along, they go along with it to get the paycheck and get the pension benefits and all these things. They have told me that they are going to quit their jobs when it hits the fan, that they are going to go home and protect their families. They have plans to move, to get out of Dodge early. So when they start to hear things about what's going down, the lawlessness, perhaps the attempted Antifa wave of violence, or maybe a communist coup, or maybe the land invasion from, UN troops or what have you, they are not going to show up and report for duty just to be part of some government agent suicide mission to go engage a bunch of, mobs of dangerous zombies in Los Angeles or something. They're not going to do that. These people who are federal agents, just so you know, they are not mind-numbed robots. They are informed. They are aware. They know what's coming. And by the way, most of them are patriots. Most of them are veterans. Most of them hate Hillary Clinton. Most of them hated Obama. A lot of them are secretly Trump supporters. Some are more skeptical of Trump. But overall, they do believe in liberty. They believe in protecting our constitutional republic. And they remember their oaths, by the way. Their sworn oaths to defend this republic against enemies, foreign and domestic. And they talk amongst themselves. And they share videos of, my videos and Alex Jones and many, many other videos. And they have ways to get information outside the censorship of the tech giants. And they are incredibly informed, and they're incredibly well equipped. See, these people, they know what kind of equipment government uses. They know what's the night vision setups that are used by federal agents, or, warrant serving raid teams, that hit houses and try to take people out. They know exactly how those things go down. They know, how to operate flashbangs, and they know what kind of IR designators or illuminators are used, just on and on and on. The communications frequencies for the local regions, everything. Because they do that job. But they are not going to take orders from Darth Vader. You see, they are not. They have plans. So there is a massive resistance even within the federal government itself, a resistance against the tyranny that they see coming. And by the way, they really are extremely annoyed at any time that their bosses put them in a position of maybe having to enforce some kind of tyranny against the citizens. And specifically, they will not go door to door confiscating guns from the American people. So if a Democrat wins office in 2020, like Beto, whatever, the guy's such a joke. Why are we even saying his name? If he becomes president, he wants to go take your AR-15s. And he says it's going to be a mandatory buyback, which is nothing more than gunpoint confiscation. They're going to come take your guns at gunpoint. At least he wants to. And he says he's going to do it by sending out federal agents to go door to door. I'm paraphrasing him. He didn't say it exactly in these terms, but this is what he means. Federal agents go door to door and knock on your door, put a gun in your face, and take your guns at gunpoint. Well, guess what? There's a whole lot of federal agents that won't do that. That's the day they leave. That's the day they join the resistance, or, I mean, kind of in their minds, they've already joined the resistance. That's the day they start acting as the resistance, because they know that the Civil War is here. The day that Beto or anybody else is in power and says they're coming for your guns, that's the day everything changes. Because there are, and I have to be careful here, I'll just say there are many, many groups all across America and individuals who are ready to take it to the tyrants. They're ready to take action. They're ready to eliminate the traitors, the enemies of America, the domestic enemies. They have the equipment, they have the know-how, they have the experience, they have the contacts. They have the networking to accomplish this, and they are all across this country. And they see what's coming, and they are not going to sign up to be target practice for gun owners who don't want to have their guns confiscated. That was very clear. So even though things are going to get very bad for America in terms of the coming geopolitical collapse and probably economic collapse on top of that, and certainly the collapse of the rule of law, there is a rising contingent of pro-America patriots, a lot of veterans who are all good men and women, and a lot of LEOs, law enforcement officers all across the country, some in police departments and a lot in sheriff's departments and as sheriff's deputies. You notice my support here, the blue line right here. If I can, there it is. The blue line, this is the thin blue line. That's why I wear this shirt. This is in honor of law enforcement that prevents our society from collapsing into chaos every single day. And I get that. And all the law enforcement officers know very well how close we are to collapsing into chaos, especially in liberal cities like Chicago or Houston or, LA and so on and so, or Baltimore for that matter, and Miami. I mean, so many of these cities are just one police shift away from total anarchy. And that's what's going to happen. But these law enforcement officers and these federal officers, I'll say federal workers, are very much informed. So things are being put in place in the minds and perhaps in the hearts and spirits of all these people. They know which side they're on. They already know they're on the side of America, the side of liberty, the side of the Second Amendment, let's say, when all of this comes down. They've already picked a side. And they know what has to be done, and they are ready to do it. Okay, another thing is that this is something that was really driven home to me in a number of conversations. And again, I'm not going to name the specific people. I don't want to get them in trouble. But it is well understood among law enforcement, special forces, federal agencies, and so on, that the real problems following the collapse are going to be local problems, or at most regional. These local problems, which are, again, generally described as zombie apocalypse, masses of lunatic, drug-infested individuals who are just totally insane and crazy, i.e. Antifa and radical leftists, that these people are going to be a huge problem if you are near them, if you live within walking distance of the zombie masses. They're going to come to your neighborhood. They're going to tear down all the houses. They're going to loot all the jewelry or whatever. They're going to beat up all the white people and rape your dog or whatever they do because they're crazy, insane leftists. They'll probably rape your children because they're all pedophiles. Whatever they do, they're sickos, right? Lawless, insane, delusional crazies. And they're on drugs too, by the way. But that this zombie apocalypse is not going to be an issue if you live in an area where they can't reach. So if you live out in, the countryside in Utah, that's not a problem for you. The zombies can't make it that far. If you live in the country in, Arizona or Texas or Colorado or, Ohio for that matter, anywhere, they're not going to make it to you. And you can for sure bet that those zombies aren't going to hike through the cold mountains of Idaho and Montana. They're just, the zombies don't have it in them. They're not even going to make it to Eastern Oregon, okay? So depending on where you are in the country, you're probably in a, in a zombie-free zone. They're just not going to get that far. The zombies are going to come out of the cities. And when I say zombies, I do mean these deranged, delusional, mindless leftists, i.e. Antifa and worse. These people are insane. They're all mentally ill. And they're being just made even more mentally ill by CNN and the media and the tech giants. Twitter has become basically a protected zone of mental illness of leftists, so they can talk to each other and drive each other even more insane. These leftists only exist in very limited areas of the country, mostly the West Coast and the East Coast. Aside from that, they're not that common. There's some in Austin. Yeah, I get that. There's some in Boulder. I understand. There are some in Phoenix, let's say, Chicago, of course, Detroit, whatever, and Houston perhaps. But it's mostly the West Coast and the East Coast, the very edges of the coast. And that's where they tend to operate, and that's where the problems are going to be. Those are the cities that are going to burn. And so those of us who don't live in those areas, we live, I live in Central Texas, for example. I know many people who live throughout the Midwest in Oklahoma or, Kansas, maybe Missouri. Some people live in the Ozarks, where I just was speaking in Branson. That's actually a good preparedness type of place. But a lot of people live in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Phoenix, Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, even Northern California, for example, and many other areas. Tennessee is a great place. A lot of areas. North Carolina, lots of places all throughout the country. If you live in those areas, you don't have to worry about the zombie apocalypse. And there's several reasons for that, including some tactical reasons. One of the tactical reasons, by the way, is that once it's on, it's a very simple matter to block the roads. I'll just leave it at that. A couple of cars get their engine blocks taken out right at the front. Highways jammed up forever. You're not going to get out of LA if there are vehicles blocking all the roads. So then you end up putting the zombies on foot, forcing them to go on foot. And the zombies can't get very far on foot because, well, they've never lived in the real world. They've been working on Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter. And so they're going to try to tweet their way across the deserts of California. And they're not going to get very far because tweeting doesn't magically create water for you to drink and keep you alive. So they're going to perish. This was an important realization for me because many of us who are preppers, we, of course, are extremely well prepared with lots of things: emergency medicine, communications equipment, food, water purifiers, let's say, firearms and defensive skills, even long-range shooting skills, which is something that I'm well trained in. Chances are, depending on what goes down, we're probably not going to have to use, we're not going to have to, I should say, engage the zombies. And the real focus of what's coming down should be about how to survive martial law, nationwide martial law, and the loss of infrastructure. What happens when the power grid goes down? What happens when Walmart isn't running trucks to deliver goods to their stores? What happens when the grocery stores can't deliver goods? What happens when there is nationwide martial law, even under Trump? Fuel is controlled. Fuel deliveries are controlled. There may be fuel shortages. So you may have to survive without food, perhaps without electricity for a period of time, perhaps without medical services, perhaps without, UPS delivering to your company. Maybe you can't go to your job, so you don't get a paycheck for a period of time. These are the real issues that are going to affect those who live more in rural areas outside the zombie zones. But if you live in the zombie zones, and I should wrap this up and say to those in rural areas, you may never have to use your firearm. You should have them. You should be ready. There might be local looting. There might be some local, short-lived individuals who try to take advantage of the situation and rob a few homes. They're going to get shot. And maybe you shoot them or somebody else. But they're not going to last very long. So that's not really a huge long-term concern. But if you live in the zombie zones, You know, the gun-free zones, like Chicago. If you live in the zombie zone, when this thing goes down, you're going to be in a fight for your life. And the police will not be there for you. This is the big, big takeaway, at least on this topic. You're going to be on your own. And you're going to be surrounded by criminal gangs. You're going to be surrounded by the most violent miscreants, the most insane, delusional, not just zombies, but organized mafia gangs, drug cartels, child traffickers. I mean, these are the most evil MFs on the planet. These people think nothing about ripping your head off. They think nothing about just killing anybody or torturing somebody to get information. These are vicious, like ex-cons that run the gangs in places like Los Angeles. If you're not out of LA when that happens, you're going to be in the fight of your life. You're going to need the very guns and the very magazines that the state of California is trying to take away from you. You're going to wish you had buried a couple of ARs with, 30 round mags and lots of spare ammo and all that, because you're going to damn well need it. And it's a question of how far the zombies get, as they look for food, look for water, look for resources. They're just going to spread like cancer tumors, heading east across California, trying to get out of the areas that are burning and collapsing into destitution and lawlessness. Remember, the cops aren't going to be there. The feds aren't going to be there. Not a chance. I've been told this information. It's not even, even among the federal agents, it's already understood that Los Angeles is gone, that even Sacramento is gone, San Francisco, San Diego, it's all gone. It's over. Now it's just a matter of time. So depending on how far away you are you within walking distance? Are you within driving distance or even bicycle distance from the zombie masses? The farther away you are, of course, the safer you become. And if you get way out into the country, again, you may never have to engage the zombies at all, which would be the preferable situation. But things are going to happen that will rock the foundations of this country. It's going to be, how do you even describe this? It's going to be, historic in a negative way, sort of a tragedy of history that's coming. And potentially millions of people will die. Cities will burn. The rule of law will be gutted. The future of the country will be in doubt. The currency may collapse. Can you survive that? Yeah, sure you can. You can, if you're well prepared. But if you're not prepared at all, you may not. So this is very important information to help you interpret what's happening. Okay, final point here, and then I'm going to wrap up this segment. It is also widely understood right now that Trump is being swamped by the swamp. That Trump is not going to be able to succeed in his mission to excise the swamp from America. This is now widely understood among those who work in federal government. That Trump has made a valiant effort, but the swamp is too embedded, it's too powerful. And the swamp is immune to the laws of the land, immune to prosecution. And nobody inside the government, especially in Washington, D.C., nobody believes that James Comey is going to be criminally indicted or Hillary Clinton's going to go down or that Barack Obama will go to jail. Nobody thinks that's going to happen because they know that the rule of law never applies to these criminal element, these swamp creatures of Washington, D.C. And there's no faith among the people who work in government that the rule of law will ever be applied equally to those who have committed treason against our country. Personally, I was a little shocked to learn this because I have been holding out hope that, maybe Andrew McCabe is going to be indicted by the DOJ. Maybe William Barr will lay down the law and reestablish actually some justice in this country. Put James Comey behind bars, indict Hillary Clinton, and all the others, John Brennan, you name it, Loretta Lynch. But that's been my view, my assessment, maybe my hope, maybe kind of an irrational hope, because according to what I've been told, nobody else believes that's going to happen. That the swamp is so powerful and so corrupt that there is no rule of law in America anymore. There is no equal justice. There will be no consequences for those at the highest levels of power who commit the worst treason against this nation. They tried to carry out a coup, they failed, they got caught, and still nothing will happen to them. It's astonishing. And it's sad because, all this time I've hoped that our constitutional republic could be protected, maybe resurrected, because we see it going down and we want it to survive, we want it to come back. I love America. We want to, as Trump says, make America great again, but we can't do that if it's lawless. We can't do that if we don't get the swamp creatures out of the system. And from what I'm being told, it's already over. There will be no draining the swamp. It's not going to happen. Everybody's compromised. Probably the NSA has the goods on everybody and they just threaten people. And it's even possible, although I should say, from what I'm told, the people in the federal government today, they believe that Trump will win a re-election in 2020 because the Democrats are just imploding. But they also recognize there's a possibility that the election will be stolen to such a great extent by Democrats and Google, the tech giants and all that, vote fraud, you name it, that there will never be a Republican president again. In fact, most of the Republicans are going to be threatened out of the House and even out of the Senate. You're already starting to see some resignations. And that the left, through the surveillance state, the intelligence community, and the tech giants, are going to create a one-party authoritarian state. And anyone who disagrees with that one-party rule will be shut down, maybe even indicted, criminalized, put in prison, censored, certainly attacked and defamed to attack your character, But even beyond that, they may just unleash kill teams, hit squads, to take out all the enemies of the Democrats. Because the Democrats are capable of that level of evil. And this is well understood among federal agents, by the way. So the bottom line here is, if I were to try to summarize this, it's going to get bad for this country. And this is going to go on for at least 6 years. And it may be a decade. Venezuela has been in a state of accelerating collapse for at least a decade. And they may go on. Who knows how bad it's going to get? How many people might starve? It's going to, America's collapse may follow a path kind of similar to Venezuela. Hopefully it never gets that bad, but it could go in that direction. And as a result, you need to be prepared for the long haul. And that's the big takeaway from all of this. Even I had to recalibrate my own beliefs on this. For a long time, I've been thinking, well, in a collapse scenario, most people are going to starve to death in the first 3 to 4 months. And certainly a lot of people won't make it through the first winter. But now, from what I'm being told, we actually need to prepare for maybe a decade of lawlessness, chaos, corruption, regional conflict, kind of a civil war, but in a more dispersed situation, really local engagements where, law enforcement is just out of the picture. They're not even engaging the lawlessness anymore. And, businesses are going to be shut down. Infrastructure is going to be crippled during this entire time. It's going to be difficult to earn a paycheck. It's going to be difficult to buy products because the inventory won't be available. It's going to be difficult to not get ripped off or have your house broken into or have things stolen from you. The criminal element's going to be unleashed. So even on a local level, you do need to take steps to prepare for your self-defense, by the way. But if you can get out of the cities and you can get out into the countryside before all of this comes down, you're going to be so much better off. You're going to be so isolated from the zombie masses, which are not going to set foot on probably 95% of the country. The zombies have a very limited area of operations. Basically, it's where they can walk. And the radical left-wing zombies can't walk very far. Their feet get uncomfortable. Their little zombie feet get tired. All right? They can't read a compass because that's not a zombie skill. Their GPS perhaps doesn't work. And if a few patriot groups engage them from time to time, then they will be really shut down. Oh, but one more thing, by the way, the media during this entire time, the left-wing media is going to be 100% in with the zombies. And the media is going to paint all conservatives and all patriots as just full-blown terrorists during this entire thing. So for the next decade, if you are a gun owner, a Christian, or a Trump supporter, or you just love America, you will be named a terrorist by CNN, MSNBC, all the usual suspects. And if a Democrat wins the White House in 2020, you can expect that president will issue arrest orders for all prominent conservatives, Christians and Trump supporters and gun owners, and even, pro-Second Amendment, independent journalists and so on. They will all be arrested, if not assassinated, by death squads sent out by the Democrats. So this is what's coming, according to the people that I've talked to. High-level people, people in the know, and a very diverse array of people. This isn't from one person or two people or even three. This is from a great number of people. And by the way, a lot of it is consistent with what we have been warning about, although some things were more surprising. Again, I was surprised by how long it's expected that this is going to go on. This Civil War, slow collapse scenario is not going to be over, not even in 1 year. It's going to drag on and on and on. And there's the website, The Organic Prepper, and there's a guy there. I think he was in the Bosnian War. I forgot his name, and he teaches some kind of preparedness classes. And he was in a long, drawn-out war that was several years. And I know someone who survived Kosovo, by the way, and I know people who've been, deployed in the Middle East, of course, and deployed in places that are collapsing. And the sad part is, and it's true, these collapses take a long time to bounce back, and some of them never do. And what a sobering thought, huh? That we may never have the America you once knew. America that you grew up with may never be restored. You can never go back to that era. And we may be living in an era that just gets worse and worse and worse for the next decade, to the point where some people are eating out of dumpsters or even eating corpses, which is being pushed by the mainstream media. Now, cannibalism, they say, is the solution to global warming and climate change. Cannibalism. But sort of what they're hinting at is people are going to be turning to cannibalism because that's the only food they have in some of these areas like Los Angeles. The zombies are going to be eating the zombies. For real. That's coming. So, point number one, don't be there when that happens. And don't think that you can just, get a hint ahead of time and get out of Dodge, because you probably won't be able to do that. The quarantines are going to go into place before you can exit the city. And by the time you hear it, how many other million people have already heard it? The highways are all jammed up at that point. Lawlessness has already spread. And the police have gone home. The feds have exited. It's already over. A city can collapse just like that in hours before you can leave. You need to live outside the cities. I mean, as far as possible, in my opinion. And that means you can't live anywhere in the eastern seaboard, obviously. It's just the population density is too crowded. You need to get, west of the Mississippi, probably. You need to get out into, all those great states. Arizona, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, the rural regions of Washington or Oregon, or of course Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, what have you. Maybe even Indiana, perhaps, even though that's east of the Mississippi. But you know what I'm saying? And maybe Tennessee is okay, but just be cautious of where you are. If you're too close to a city, I even say if you're within a car, one gas tank drive of a liberal city, you are potentially in a danger zone. And so even in Texas, Austin is a zombie zone. But most of us in Texas, we have good reason to believe that Austin will be fairly easy to control, because once the zombies are engaged, they're not going to get very far. It is Texas, after all. It's like, 70% of the retired veterans are here, and they still know how to defend their country. That's all I'm going to say. So a lot more videos are coming. I have a lot more to share with you, things that I've learned recently, some things that have surprised me, some realizations that have come to light through new analysis. I'll be posting these on oblivionagenda.com. And of course, that just means they're on brighteon.com as well. I've got a couple of websites that you may find interesting. Survival.news. And for gear reviews like survival gear, I've got gear.news. So check both of those out. Oh, and collapse.news. There's some overlap between these sites, just depending on the specific articles, but they're all very valuable sites. I'm going to keep them online as long as I can. It's pretty much known now that when it hits the fan, my main websites are probably going to be seized and shut down. That's going to be newstarget.com and naturalnews.com, but that the seizures will not include many of the smaller sub-sites like collapse.news, gear.news, survival.news, and so on. So it's, if you see our main websites just gone, you should really go look at our sub-sites. You should make a list of those sites so that you can be prepared to go to them. And you should go to brighteon.com if it's still online. They're going to take us all down at some point, but there's always going to be alternatives of ways to find people if you know the other domain names and so on, other destinations where they can be found. So make a list now, get prepared now, more than you have ever been prepared before. Time is growing very short. Some of this could be initiated in the next few months, or perhaps, another inflection point in all of this is the 2020 election, and then the months after that election. So imagine November and December of 2020. That's when things could really get fiery and very catastrophic across America, depending on what happens between now and then. I pray for your safety, by the way, just to wrap this up. I thank you for your support. I pray for your survival and your safety, your wisdom and your courage in this incredible time that we face together. Everything is at stake. The future of our nation, the future of our liberty, our freedom, our republic, everything, even our right to keep and bear arms. And I will just say this to share with all of you. I will not give up my firearms. I will not die on my knees with some tyrannical authoritarian regime putting a bullet in my head. I will fight for my rights, my freedoms, and my country. And no matter what it comes to, I will not compromise my principles, and I will not give up my liberties. No matter who wins any election, no matter who's in charge, if they want to come get our guns, they better be prepared for a damn fight, because that's what's coming. If you don't respect the Second Amendment, then the Founding Fathers said that the Second Amendment should be activated against you, because you are the tyrants that are named in all the letters and all the documents leading up to the Second Amendment, which was created to stop tyrants, to stop out-of-control government. When the government comes to destroy the Second Amendment, that's when you know it is most desperately needed. That's its most desperate moment. That's what it was created for. It's like a time capsule of freedom. Use it when it is needed to defend against tyranny. And those of you who are trying to take the guns from people, you should know people aren't going to volunteer to give. They're not just going to give up their guns all across America. You might disarm people in your liberal cities. Go ahead. If you want to disarm people in your liberal cities, that just makes it all the easier for when things really happen. But those of us who live in real America, pro-liberty America, pro-America America, under no circumstances are we going to hand over our AR-15s to a bunch of lunatic, lawless, left-wing tyrants and authoritarians. Under no circumstances. It's not negotiable. That is the line in the sand. And if you don't realize that, you're going to be corrected at some point. We'll see what happens. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers. Everything is at stake. Take this seriously. Share this where you can. Encourage others to go to oblivionagenda.com and stay informed. God bless you all.